made it clear that the global environment Canada once relied on has fundamentally changed. Long-standing assumptions about stability, predictability, and partnership can no longer be taken for granted. Not because Canada has failed, but because the world itself is shifting. When a major power adopts a more transactional, pressure-based approach to global affairs, every country connected to it must adapt. Canada is no exception. But rather than reacting emotionally, Carney's message outlined something far more significant. Canada is adjusting deliberately. For decades, Canada's prosperity and security were closely tied to a single relationship. That relationship delivered enormous benefits, but it also created dependency. What Carney communicated today is that dependency is no longer a safe strategy. And that is where everything changes. Instead of clinging to a world that no longer exists, Canada is quietly expanding its reach outward. Across Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and beyond, partnerships are being strengthened, not as symbolic gestures, but as strategic pillars. Countries want to do more with Canada, not because Canada is desperate, but because Canada offers what the world increasingly values: stability, credibility, skilled labor, resources, and a rules-based approach in an unpredictable era. From Southeast Asia to the European Union, from the United Kingdom to the Gulf states, Canada is being welcomed as a serious partner. Major investments are flowing in, trade relationships are diversifying, economic exposure is being spread, not concentrated. This is not retreat, this is repositioning. Carney's message makes clear that Canada is no longer structuring its future around a single axis. Instead, it is building a network that reduces vulnerability and increases leverage. And this matters to everyday Canadians more than it might seem. When trade is diversified, jobs are more secure. When investment sources multiply, industries become more resilient. When partnerships expand, national decisions are no longer held hostage to one political mood shift beyond our borders. But Carney's message went even further than economics. What truly changes everything is how Canada now sees its role in the world. For years, Canada described itself primarily as a middle power, influential but cautious, cooperative but rarely assertive. That identity was rooted in a world where multilateral rules were respected and major powers exercised restraint. That world is fading. What Carney articulated today is that Canada is no longer content to simply adapt to decisions made elsewhere. It intends to shape outcomes alongside others who share its values, even if that means acting without traditional partners at the center. Canada is already doing this. From security cooperation to international coalitions, Canada is participating in global efforts where credibility matters more than size. In some cases, these coalitions exist without the involvement of the United States at all, and that is not accidental. It reflects a new confidence. Canada is learning that influence does not come from dependence. It comes from reliability, capability, and consistency. When countries know Canada will follow through, uphold commitments, and contribute meaningfully, Canada earns a seat, not by asking, but by being needed. This shift also explains why defense and security are now being discussed differently. Carney's message made clear that sovereignty is not theoretical. It must be defended in practical terms. Investments in defense are not about aggression. They are about autonomy, about ensuring Canada is never forced to rely entirely on the goodwill of others to protect its territory, its people, or its interests. That includes the Arctic, a region becoming increasingly strategic as climate change alters access and competition intensifies. Canada understands that if it cannot credibly operate in its own northern territory, others will define outcomes there instead. Strength in this context is not provocation. It is insurance. And this brings us back to why Carney's message matters to all Canadians. He is not asking the country to abandon its values. He is asking it to protect them. Canada has always defined itself by restraint, cooperation, and diplomacy. None of that is being discarded. But restraint without capability is vulnerability. Cooperation without leverage is dependence. Carney's message signals that Canada is done confusing hope with strategy. The world is entering a period of fragmentation. Power is being exercised more openly. Rules are being tested. Alliances are being renegotiated. In that environment, countries that hesitate are pressured. Countries that prepare are respected. Canada has chosen preparation. This does not mean confrontation is inevitable. In fact, the opposite is true. Countries that can stand on their own are less likely to be coerced. They negotiate from strength, not fear. They maintain peace by being capable, not by assuming goodwill. That is the maturity Carney is signaling. Canada is not becoming something it isn't. It is becoming what it needs to be. A country that understands the world has changed. A country that diversifies its relationships. A country that protects its sovereignty without abandoning cooperation. A country that no longer waits for permission to act in its own interest. This is why this message changes everything. Not because it announces a single policy, but because it marks a shift in mindset. Canada is no longer assuming stability. It is building resilience. And in a world where uncertainty is becoming the norm, that may be the most powerful message a leader can deliver.